Do not mess with Adong Judith, because she is probably too busy anyway to listen to you while you're trying to mess with her. She is a playwright, a film and theater maker who fearlessly provokes public debate in her native Uganda. She is not afraid of anybody, including the Lord's Resistance Army. Her plays focus on issues such as forgiveness after war and conflict, and questions who has the right to forgive on behalf of others. She has broken taboos with her theater on the LGBTIQ rights struggle in Uganda, and she has written film and television dramas on HIV/AIDS prevention. Naturally, she has had to deal with many critics. The jury has honored Adong Judith for her provocative use of theater as a platform for witnessing, reporting, raising social consciousness, and stimulating dialogue to achieve social change. Adong Judith.
Good evening. Thank you so much for honoring us with your presence, and thank you, Prince Claus Fund, for this wonderful platform. I first discovered the power of storytelling when I was working as a staff writer for a radio drama series for an NGO youth drama that focuses on the HIV prevalence. And what I really hated about this NGO type job was the total disregard for the creatives and the entertainment values. What I loved about them was the money. My philosophy is that there's no reason why social change art shouldn't also be highly creative and hilariously entertaining. In 2012, following a presentation of my LGBTQ rights play, Just Me, You, and the Silence at the Old Vic Theatre in London, the London City Nights reporter wrote about the evening, and he said, so when I went out on a chilly November night to see a play about the LGBT issues in Uganda, I wasn't expecting a very cheery night out. And yet I laughed my head off nearly all through it. And yet, it was really in 2006 that I would put my philosophy to the test. I encountered these powerful stories of the former child soldiers in my own hometown in Gulu in northern Uganda. And so I decided to write my first play, Silent Voices. The stories that I encountered while I was interacting with the former child soldiers were so powerful that at the time I thought to myself that I didn't want to write a thesis that was going to gather dust in the libraries of Makerere University, because I'd gone to the former child soldiers rehabilitation center to research and find out how theater therapy is used for their rehabilitation, if any. So Silent Voices was developed at the Sundance Institute Theater Lab in 2010. And these pictures remind me of one of the headlines during the premiere of the play in Uganda, which read, Silent Voices Goes Loud. The play received its world premiere in the year 2012 at Uganda National Theatre. It was very, very instrumental in correcting misconceptions and stereotypes, including some of the government control, mainstream media propaganda that was blaming all the war crimes in northern Uganda on the rebels. It brought together politicians, religious, cultural, transitional justice, Amnesty Commission, and the victims at the same table for critical conversations about the issues of war crimes. It was described, among other powerful descriptions in Uganda media, as the spiritual rebirth of Ugandan theater since its decline due to political persecution of artists by the regime of former President Idi Amin. So I decided to change my company name to Silent Voices from Alpha Productions Limited because I realized that I was really interested in and cared about the stories of the silent voices in general, disadvantaged groups whose voices are silenced. Personally, I do not believe that the stories of the people I tell, I do not believe that the people whose stories I tell are voiceless. The name merely speaks to the repressive silencing of their really powerful, raw, and stunning voices. My stories or my work merely amplify these voices. But I found that the slogan, "We give voice," was more catchy than "We amplify voice." And so I went with that. And during my work, I realized that there are three main causes to social change issues. One of them is a strong allegiance to taboos. And I often say that my big idea for Africa is detabooing Africa. Two is misconceptions and stereotypes of the other that is mostly born out of fear. And three, politics. Most politicians usually use these taboos, misconceptions, and stereotypes to take advantage of the masses for their agenda. And I found that to counter these problems, it's very important that the stories come in because the power of stories is in personalizing these social issues to bring them closer home. There tends to be like a crowd mentality mindset to think that the problem is always out there. And so when I personalize these issues, I touch and move the audience to think, well, this could happen to me or to someone that I love. And this personalization, for me, works in three major ways. One is that it makes the audience feel. Thus, it elicits empathy and understanding. Ugandan art reporter Andrew Kagwa wrote about my play, Just Me, You and the Silence, after its world premiere last year in Uganda, and he said, "You may forget the dialogues, but you won't certainly forget how the play made you feel." And so the second thing for me is that it challenges the audience to think. And I remember this one incident, one of the most powerful incidents during the production of Silent Voices that I had translated from English into the Acholi language because the production was happening in northern Uganda. And there was an Acholi journalist who had attacked me on Facebook in 2013, both on Facebook and on the local radio, accusing me of promoting homosexuality and misrepresenting Acholi people abroad. And after this show in northern Uganda, he approached me and introduced himself. And I remember thinking, oh boy, am I safe? And I was pleasantly surprised when he told me, don't worry, I've come to apologize because after watching this powerful show about war crimes, I realize now that you care about all people who are suppressed and not just the gay dollar. Gay dollar is a term that is used to refer to straight or non-gay people who support the gay cause with the belief that they're only after the gay money, and because gay people are supposed to be very rich. Three, it provokes conversations about the issues. I tell people that I am so happy that Donald Trump is the president of the US. And often they look at me like I'm either dumb or evil. But when I lived in the US, there was so much denial about the existence of racism. And now, with Donald as the president, well, let's just say my American friends who used to accuse me of projecting racism can't stop apologizing. So I look at my stories as President Trump to America's racism. Like, he's the personification of America's racism. And when I personalize the issues in my stories, I bring attention to these issues in ways that cannot be ignored, except they have to be acknowledged and then talked about. So one of the things that I was interested in, my biggest dream, is to give back to the African continent from the knowledge and skills that I acquired when I was in school in the US, where I was privileged to take classes in theater directing and film directing, because the African continent is riddled with limited and limiting training programs for both theater and film. So in 2016, I thought about a way to make this happen. And at the time, I decided to take advantage of the funding that I was already receiving from Dune Foundation for the productions. And so I used our productions to train 10 African theater makers every year. And I mentored them not only in high-quality productions, but also in making theater that dares to ask serious questions. And my future dream, or one of my biggest plans, is to duplicate this mentorship approach to different groups who are interested in growing in both theater and film, because I've discovered that this is a method that works. This year, for instance, we brought back our 2016 and 2017 alumni to direct our 5 short plays for the 2018 apprenticeship, and I was very impressed. The experience was best described by a renowned Ugandan poet and professor of literature from Makerere University, Dr. Susan Chiguli, who said, "What makes this year especially powerful is to see the directors you've trained direct powerful productions. It has evolved from Judy Adong churning powerful productions to Judy Adong creating a legacy." So the theater apprenticeship is an intense crushed program that aims to graduate seasoned directors. Every year, I am excited to just look at the shock and horror on the faces of my trainees when I brief and tell them, this is an apprenticeship, not college. So think of it as a job. And like a job, you will be assigned scenes to direct. And by midway into the training, if your scenes are not measuring up, I will fire you, like on a job. But it's truly their response that usually is priceless. And most of them usually respond to the effect of, "We've heard terrible things about you as a theater surgeon, and you truly live up to your reputation." And my response to them usually is, "Thank you. And thank you, everyone, for listening to me."